It's Behind the Glass. First time in a long time. Earl the Pearl, Anthony Antonelli, Mikey McNuggets here. We had a little bit of time this Tuesday to knock out a Behind the Glass episode. We haven't done this in a while. Steve Becker's been asking us to try and carve out some time, and we felt Tuesday morning was the perfect opportunity to do so because Director Steve's off. Mm-hmm. All three of us are Behind the Glass, name of the show. And we did a lot of extra prep work yesterday to get ready for today's show, which means we had a few minutes to do this, so we're going to wing it. We have no rundown. We have no schedule. We have not discussed for 1 second what we're going to talk about today. So are you ready? Ant, are you ready?
I'm 2-0 in fantasy. That's what we're discussing today. What are you guys up to? How's the bottom of the ring feel, huh?
Well, hey, I'm 1-1, and I just beat the living piss out of Earl.
Yeah,
no
Earl,
offense.
are you
And I got
okay?
the highest score totality-wise in the league through 2 weeks, but what are you going to do?
I'm 1-1, man. It beats 0-2. You know, if you 0-2, your playoff probability drops down to like 11%. So, you know, I'm doing okay.
I saw something on Twitter this morning, actually, that may be a good – we're winging it, so it might be a good discussion point here. The narrative going into the Jacksonville game was if the Browns lose 0-2, you've seen the stat, it's 11.5% of teams that start 0-2 make the playoffs. Not a death sentence, but really tough to climb out of it. The odds are stacked against you. And had the Browns lost, I can assure you that not only most of us here in Cleveland, and I think it would have depended on how the game went, but had the Browns lost 0-2 whole, most people would say season's over. But the Ravens and the Bengals are both 0-2, and no one seems to be writing them off. Earl, do you think it's – and a lot of it would depend on how Deshaun looked. Because if he looked bad like he did against Dallas, then it'd be hard to see a path. He obviously didn't. They win the game. Deshaun looked improved. We'll talk about that in a sec. I think it's a fair – I won't say slice of the pie, but is it a fair narrative that some other teams just get the benefit of the doubt while the Browns seem to not get that same luxury? Did I ask that question? Did it make sense?
No, it's a fair narrative, but you got to earn respect, right? You got to earn trust, and I think the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals have earned some trust over the course, you know, especially over the last 3 or 4 years. You know, you look at the Ravens under Harbaugh. This is a team that's been, you know, constantly in the playoffs. This is a team that wins a lot of games. They tend to show up in big moments until they get to the playoffs, and then they kind of fold. In Cincinnati's case, you know, a couple years ago, they started 0-2. Made it all the way to the AFC Championship game. So those teams have been in this position before and seem to have overcome those odds. I think when it comes to the Cleveland Browns, either publicly or locally or nationally, should I say, like, I don't know where that level of faith and trust is at with this football team for them to be 0-2 and people be like, okay, the sky isn't falling, the Cleveland Browns can still get it done.
No, they get no benefit of the doubt because they have no track record of digging themselves out. And we had no idea what Deshaun was going to be coming into the season. And we've still only seen, one really good half? I mean, like an okay half? So, yeah, no, they don't give it the benefit of the doubt at all.
Yeah, it comes back to quarterback play and how much you trust the quarterback. Like, the Ravens lose 2 games this season that make no sense. The Ravens had no business losing to the Raiders. They were up 10 points in the fourth quarter.
I agree with that.
A team that's built to run out the clock with Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, and somehow, and give Raiders credit, they deserved it. Brock Bowers looked awesome, by the way.
He did.
They did some really good things down the stretch, beat the Ravens, whatever, weird loss. They played the Chiefs tight in week 1. The Bengals, on the other hand, it goes to show you how much faith some people have in Joe Burrow. Because let's take the quarterback out of the equation, right? You have a pissed-off wide receiver 1 who wanted a new contract, didn't get it. Your second best weapon, wide receiver 2, Teagan hasn't played in 2 weeks. Their defense is suspect. They've lost a lot of guys. They did a decent job holding Mahomes in check, but as we'll talk about later on today's show, or when you're seeing this earlier on today's show, these new trends in the NFL that have decreased passing touchdowns drastically over the last 3 years. They're down 37% through 2 weeks from just 3 years ago.
I'm not surprised by that, though.
It's a lot of too high safety. They're making teams play check down, and I can't wait to hear Dustin and Tyvis, or you guys have heard Dustin and Tyvis break it down. But I have a lot less faith in the Bengals to be able to climb out of this hole, even though they historically start slow. Burrow's, I saw a stat, he's 1-9 in the first 2 weeks of the season in his career. Like, that's crazy. Like, that, I don't know how, and Zach Taylor has to change everything about how they go through the preseason. They played the guys this year. They tried to change it. Still didn't work. So I have a lot less faith in the Bengals to climb out of the 0-2 hole than I do in the Ravens. And had the Browns fallen into an 0-2 hole, it all would have came back to how Deshaun played. If they lost a shootout and Deshaun looked awesome, I'd feel pretty good about the chances. And had he played like he did against Dallas, I'd say you probably don't. Good news for us, he played better. They got a dub in Jacksonville on the road despite committing 100 penalty yards and going 2 of 14 on third down. So we don't have to have that discussion.
Did you saw I tweeted this out yesterday? Did you see the stat that the Browns are now 15 and 2 under Kevin Stefanski when they don't commit a turnover in the game? Taking care of the football matters, and I think that's what it always comes down to. When you go back to the stats and when you look at Deshaun Watson, to me, the turnover category that's where I point to.
Huge.
You're not the reason why we lost this game. There will come in time this season where Deshaun is going to have to be the reason why we win games. But if you look at it in its totality, I know Ant said it was, one good half. I mean, overall, I thought he played really well. I think that, you've heard Tyvis say it a lot, that it's hard to win in the NFL. You hear Tom Brady. I heard Tom Brady on the broadcast say it's hard as hell just to execute one single play in the league. It's hard to get 4 or 5 yards in the NFL, and to do that successfully, you need to have all moving parts moving in the same direction just to have success on one play. So imagine what goes into like winning an entire game. Like in the NFL, you're gonna win ugly more often than not. If you look at the first 2 weeks of this season, right? Like this week 2 alone, we just wrapped up week 2. The amount of upsets that took place in the NFL this week was crazy.
Crazy.
Like if you look at it, you alluded to, the new league trend. It's almost like defenses is catching up to these offenses. And not just here in Cleveland, but throughout the league, a lot of offenses are starting slow because nobody is really taking training camp or preseason serious. And so that allows the defenses to catch up to you even more. And so when I just look at it in its totality, I thought Deshaun Watson did a good job of not losing the Cleveland Browns the game. And if you want to keep it a buck, he scored the only offensive touchdown that we had that entire game and led us on, 3 more drives that ended up in scores. So that's all you can ask for.
So one of my favorite parts of working on UCSS is, like, after the fact, going back and dissecting what happens. And now that we have Sean King on board, and we got something special with Sean King coming up on Wednesday, by the way. He had a great breakdown last week. I can't wait to hear him break it down this week, and we're going to actually have him break down some film that we're going to use on social media that I was talking about this morning. And I've now watched every offensive play the Browns run live and then twice back. Once when we were just sitting in the office yesterday going through the All-22 and then looking for these specific plays. My initial thoughts on Deshaun watching the game live was he played okay. 186 yards, no touchdowns, no picks, made a couple big throws. The escapability was back. I thought he played pretty well. I thought he played okay. Like, we've definitely lowered the bar on what we expect from Deshaun, but for what it was a solid game.
Right.
Going back and watching, I actually think he played better than what I thought he did in the moment. I think part of the reason the numbers are down across the league, but specifically for Deshaun in this case, and the feeling of he didn't make a ton of big plays, I think it's more of how Stefanski called the game. I actually think going back and watching throw by throw, Deshaun executed what he was asked to do way more frequently than I think I gave him credit in the initial watch. Because in the initial watch, you can't really see his eyes. You're just seeing where the ball goes.
It's funny because we had this conversation yesterday morning, and, you went back after the fact. I went back and I watched the All-22, and I think when we react during the postgame show, shout out to you all, by the way, another 28K. But
up to 30.
When we react on those postgame shows, we reacting initially to what we just saw, right?
You don't have the second view.
We
just
totally
see the moment.
We just seen the TV broadcast just like everybody else did. But you go back and you watch the film again, and you look at some of the throws he made. You look at, like you said, the escapability. And back to that point about Kevin Stefanski, and he's talked about this a lot. And I think we need to do a better job of paying attention to points like this. You design your game plan per your situation, per opponent, right? We might have a broad expectation or view of what the Cleveland Browns offense is supposed to look like or what this offense will entail, what our identity might be. But I've heard Stefanski say in the past that our identity, it can change week to week based on the opponent, based on the situation. This is week 2. You didn't have Conklin again. You didn't have Wills again.
Yep.
You had to put Hudson back out there. We seen the situation. You don't have Njoku. You bring a tight end up off the practice squad. So with all those different nuances that took place on the offense, and then you going against a pretty damn good Jacksonville Jaguars defensive front, you have to call a game plan that can not only make your quarterback comfortable and be able to execute and have success, but for the rest of the team. I thought the best play call throughout that entire game was the fourth down when Winston came in.
Yep.
It looked like it was going to be a QB sneak. You had Nick Harris lined up in the backfield as a fullback. You get that pitch out to Jerome Ford, and it's a huge run. And so just that type of creativity and understanding the moment, I thought he did a good job of putting his team in a situation to have success.
I'm curious, as we get further and further into the season, how much more Stefanski will kind of open up the offense in terms of a vertical passing game. Mm-hmm. And once again, we talked about the two high safeties. Mina Kimes tweeted in week 1 they played 61%. All NFL defenses, 61% of snaps, had two high safeties, which prevents you from attempting to go deep. It doesn't mean you can't, but it's giving you the underneath routes as opposed to forcing you to take deep shots. And I'm curious to see what the week 2 numbers will look like, but I'm guessing it's going to be in that
more the same. Yeah.
It's going to be in that same range. And when you look at the passing charts from week 1 and week 2 from Deshaun, most of the throws were within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. A lot of dink and dunk, which, once again, when you watch it live, I was like, I think he's just dinking and dunking. When you go back, that's how a lot of these plays were designed. And that's why I think it's important to remember in these immediate post-game reactions, we only have the information that's available to us. And then as you go back and see, like, you can change your opinion. And I think, I gave Deshaun a C in the immediate post-game reaction. I think he actually played a B. Like, it wasn't great. He didn't blow anything. Like, to get an A, you have to make certain plays and make things happen. The 20-yard pass he had a Jeudy on the sideline, the first quarter on that first drill, very easily could have been intercepted. Went right through the DB's hands, and Jeudy makes an incredible catch. So I think I gave him a B. But compared to Dallas, that's like a significant, tangible, gap in incremental improvement. And if we can get, you're not going to get that level of jump each game. But if that's the Deshaun, if that's the baseline for Deshaun, the Browns are in a really good spot.
I think, it depends on the fan, right? And I'm curious to know what Ant thinks about this. There's going to be a segment of the fan base who see this podcast, and they're going to say, no, that's bull. They're making excuses for him. He makes this amount of money. The Browns paid to get this type of player. But if you look at the NFL, man, you have to adapt situation to situation, year to year, circumstance to circumstance. Just look throughout the league. Forget just what's going on in Cleveland. If you look throughout the NFL right now, the quarterback play has not been over-the-top dynamic, right? It's not like guys are out here throwing for 200 yards every week.
And what 200? You're saying 200. We're not saying 300.
Right.
We're not saying 400. We're saying 200.
Yards.
And the number I alluded to earlier, Earl, just so people know, in 2021 through 2 weeks, there was 110 passing touchdowns in football. 110 also in 2020. So back-to-back years, 110 passing touchdowns through 2 weeks. This year, in totality, there's been 69.
There you go.
Down across the board.
Think about it. They shifted the rules to give us more offense, right? It was pretty. It was fun. But defenses catch up. And it's not like the rules have shifted back towards the defense much. But this is the NFL. We've seen this so much throughout the history of time. Defenses catch up to offense. Sometimes offense catch up. Bull talks about it all the time. It's like the pendulum just swung in the other direction all over again. But it creates, I think, better football. Even though the offense is more sloppy, the games are more competitive. I don't think the NFL is meant to be pretty and finesse all the time. Sometimes you got to get your hands dirty.
And do you like the – because I disagree in a way, but I want to hear you first. Do you like the new – I don't want to say dink and dunk because that's doing a disrespect to what these the offenses are designed to do this a lot of times, which is take the underneath routes. Do you like the mucked up version of offense we're seeing now, which is sustainable 10, 13, 14 play drives to march 90 yards as opposed to one big play that lights it up?
Yeah, I don't have much of an opinion on it. I'm going to be honest with you guys. So I don't have Sunday ticket this year, so I can only really watch the Browns and then whatever national games we get if I manage to catch them. I will say the best game I've watched so far this year is still the first one between the Ravens and the Chiefs. And I don't think any of them made a super explosive play that entire one. So, yeah, if you dink and dive it, and run your offense really quick, it's still enjoyable. If it's a fast-paced moving offense, but you're only getting 10, 15 yards, it's enjoyable. I mean, not everything has to be Kirk Cousins throwing it 70 yards in a minute and a half last night when he came back. And I also don't think you guys are making excuses for Deshaun. I think the entire offense looked worse in the second half of that game, including the offensive line, especially the offensive line.
I mean, listen, they scored 3 points in the second half.
Yeah,
they scored
the whole second half of that game was kind of a cluster. And I'm going to chalk maybe a little bit of it up to the weather because I know it started pouring. So the offense is going to slow down naturally, and neither team has a particularly amazing running game. ETN couldn't get anything really going the whole time. So don't think you guys are giving Deshaun too many excuses. I'm on the side of it's not bullshit, Earl. Like, you guys are making very fair cases, and comparing him to that first week, he did look like a completely different player that first half. Like, he looked like a real competent quarterback.
Yeah. Oh, we only have 2 games to compare.
Right.
Like, in week 9, we could go back and look at week 7. 2 games. We only got what we can compare to what we compare. We didn't even see him through the end of last season. So anyone who's upset that we would compare week 2 to week 1, what else do you want? Like, and he played better. It's not like we're going back. We're talking about the improvements.
Hey, Jeudy is a baller. Random thought.
Hold that for 1 sec. In terms of
the Broncos never gave him anybody. I knew it.
I got a little beef with the Jerry Jeudy stuff.
Why?
Through 2 games, he has 98 yards, and we're celebrating this like it's a giant like.
How many drops do we have compared to the other wide receivers?
He doesn't have any, which is a big. But I'm saying, like, Justin Jefferson had a 97-yard touchdown. Jerry Judy's
did you see the referee on that play?
Yo, get him a steroid check. That dude's on PED. Yo, that guy was more of a steroid check. But like, listen, Jerry Judy's been good for the Browns so far. I think we're kind of conning ourselves into being like he's emerged. I say he's emerging. He ain't there yet.
He's emerging, but I guess this is my mindset. I felt like coming into this situation, people thought like Jerry Jeudy was a bad wide receiver, like he couldn't play football. Like, Jeudy can ball, and it's not like he was like just this poorest afterthought in Denver. I get it, he didn't live up to the expectations of a first-round draft pick, but 2 years ago, what was it, 950-something yards last year?
I think
it was like
972.
a little bit over 725, so that's still pretty damn good yardage in the NFL, especially when you really don't have good quarterback play at all. And then you talk about the trends. I mean, for the last 2 years, clearly it's been trending downward. So I thought he did a decent enough job based on the situation he had. And he seems to be a guy that has a lot of chemistry early with Deshaun Watson. We alluded to it on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show yesterday, how it seems like when Deshaun breaks out and scrambles,
the scramble chemistry.
He's scrambling with him, and he's catching the football. That's more than we can say about Amari. That's more than we can say about Elijah Moore. So,
listen, I'm not saying he's been bad.
Yeah.
I've just seen a lot of like Jerry Jeudy wide receiver 1. I'm like,
but the 98 yards though, again, defenses are adjusting. A lot of these offenses, like a lot of the play calls, is schemed up to go underneath. They're not really giving you too much down the field.
But Judy's supposed to be a rack monster. Like those underneath
you still got to take.
But also Cooper has 30 yards in 2 games. So like,
listen, I'm not
saying
saying he's been bad. I like what I saw against Jacksonville. I'm just saying, when I see on Twitter, like, this is the greatest. I love Nick Carr. Nick Carr's my guy. I actually never met Nick, to be honest with you. But he cracks me up on Twitter. I enjoy what he does. He's a necessary part of any type of team, fan base, social media. Like, and Nick Carr's like, he's already a top 15 receiver in the league this year. I'm like, Nick, like,
be easy,
like,
huh? Be cool.
Because once you do that, and here's the issue, and I'm not saying you did it. Nick did it, but
Nick did it.
Once you say that, then we have to compare him to those guys. And Jerry Jeudy is good, and he's played well throughout the first 2 games of the season. He didn't do anything against Dallas, but good game against Jacksonville.
He scored.
I guess. But, like, we can't start comparing him to the likes of the Justin Jeffersons and those guys, which when you say he's top 15, like, that's who you get compared. So, just saying, I'm not saying pump the brakes. I'm not saying Jerry Jeudy's bad. He's been exactly what the Browns could have hoped for through 2 games. But let's just pump the brakes a little bit on him being a legit number 1 so far. He's been a good 2. He's been their 1.
I mean,
but you can't say someone's a bona fide 1 when they have 98 yards through 2 games.
Do the Browns have a bona fide 1?
No, and that's a big issue. That's a big issue.
Yeah,
do the Chiefs have a bona fide 1?
Okay. Travis Kelce technically would count as a bona fide 1.
Travis Kelce has not been that good this year.
He doesn't give a shit about the regular season.
It's true. He's too busy like partying with Taylor.
I'm just saying he hasn't been good.
Did you real quick about did you guys see him at the U.S. Open? I don't understand fashion. I think I'm the least fashionable guy of all time. I can't say that word. What was he wearing?
I didn't see it.
He was wearing like all Gucci. He had like
a
Gucci
but
bucket hat.
I'll pull it up. I want live
It was
reaction.
a bucket hat.
What?
It was a bucket hat that he was wearing, and then like a
I know
polo.
what a bucket hat is. Come on.
Oh, yeah, he's like, what is he wearing?
But
You
like,
don't know the designer of the bucket hat.
I
didn't
It was
see
all
it.
Gucci,
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
pretty sure.
gonna find this to you. It was Gucci, right? You said.
Yeah, because it was like the red and green lines with the white.
Like, what is
hat.
this? Is that style? Like, if it is,
No, not really.
No, not to me.
I understand. I am not
Not to
like
me.
I am not a pinnacle of fashion whatsoever. Trust me,
neither.
I'm well aware that this is not. But like, I see some. Okay, here's like the full fit.
It's fantastic content.
The fit is cool. The hat is probably doing a little bit too much.
And I don't know if you can.
I can't. I'm not sitting next to the
Just
camera,
search.
so-
Just search Travis Kelce Gucci. I don't understand sometimes. And you know what? He rocked it. Like, if I put that on, I look like the dumbest MFer in the world. When I was on
Did he
TV,
rock it?
or when I was on TV every day, I had to wear a suit. I see some of the stuff Cam Newton would wear, and I'd always be like, man, just imagine if I tried to put that on. Like, Cam Newton rocks that, and if I put it on, I'd be laughed off.
If we had
laughed
to
off
wear
TV.
suits, I think I can kill it.
Oh, I have some suits that like
Yeah, I think I can.
we
kill
looked good at the Emmys, like
it. Yeah.
cleaned up nice and
Yeah,
had a
we-
nice suit.
we-
You had a
we
nice
could do
suit,
that.
but I don't miss wearing a suit every day.
I don't want to wear a suit.
Whew.
I don't
all.
even like wearing like polos.
Miserable. Absolutely
At all.
miserable.
I think the Browns can get away with not having a bona fide number one, but at the same time, I'm not ready to like panic with the Amari Cooper situation yet.
It's early.
It is early, and if anybody has earned some grace, it is Amari Cooper. The dude has been nothing but a bona fide baller since he's been here. Deshaun Watson just got to keep, being consistent with the type of play that he had last week, and I think if he can build that consistency, eventually at some point this season, you're going to see that big game with 300-plus yards, the multiple touchdowns. But, like, this thing is a marathon, not a sprint. And, as you kind of, like you say, we react initially to what we see in the post-game show, but you go back and you watch the film again, and then after that, you go back and you just watch other teams, you be like, okay, this is not just going on with the Cleveland Browns. This is something that we're experiencing throughout the NFL right now.
Yeah, it's been a weird start to the league. A lot of teams that we expected to be good so far not off the hot starts. Some teams we did not expect to be that good. The Chargers, I know they beat the Panthers, but beat the piss out of them. The Saints just absolutely boat raced the Cowboys, who made the Browns look like a JV team in week one.
How good as a coach is Mike Tomlin?
I don't know. All I know is he finds ways to win every year. It doesn't matter
year.
who, and which probably means he's a really good coach. But they look bad. Every time I watch them play, I leave the game saying, I don't think they're that
It's
good.
like a catch-22.
Yeah.
Because they haven't won a playoff game in a long time.
And that's sometimes we talk ourselves into. And I go back to the Steelers when they were 13-1. Everyone was saying this team's not that good, and then Steelers fans are out here saying, "Well, 13-1, of course we're going to say." Eh. And then you remember, and then, so sometimes the records can deceive, and that's why through 2 weeks it's hard to overreact.
Remember
to,
that year
to
the
anything.
Atlanta Hawks had the number one seed
Yeah,
in
they
the
were
Eastern
yeah.
Conference, and it was horrible.
It's kind of what you were saying, Earl, though. Like, Justin Fields is playing well enough not to be the reason they're losing and their defense is holding. But I hope for Justin Fields' sake he'll be good enough to be the reason they win, because I'm rooting for him. Like, especially after he got out of Chicago. I wish he wasn't on the Steelers. But, I don't think you can win in the playoffs if your quarterback is just good enough not to win or not to lose.
I think once you get to the playoffs, man, you got to amp it up a bit. But I do think that,
It's a great point.
in this situation, especially when we talk about Deshaun Watson, we seen some signs of life last week, right? And if we can just continue to build on those signs of life, build those consistent habits, I do think, to your point, there's going to come a point in this season to where, like, Deshaun kind of, like, just balls the hell out, and just maybe that builds a lot of confidence, because you're right. Come the playoffs, you're going to need a little bit more than that. It's going to be more that's on his shoulders. But he did some things that let me know that mentally he can lock in when he need to. I'm telling you, that 16-play drive, how consistent he was, like, you could just see the courage. But that 16-yard, that 22-yard throw to Elijah Moore, right?
Jeudy.
Or just to Jeudy. And then, like, just a couple plays that was made later on in the game when we really needed a play to be made. Those are the things that you need Deshaun Watson to do. And I think it was said on this show, you need about 2 or 3 of those a game. Don't need 20 of them, just 2 or 3 of those a game. But you better be able to make those 2 or 3 come playoff time. That's when it matters the most.
Last point we'll wrap up here on Behind the Glass. Big confidence boost leaving Jacksonville. There is no better team to play if you want to boost your confidence than the New York Giants, which is on the docket for the Browns. this weekend. They are an abomination of a football team, and the Browns should beat them by, on paper, probably 3 touchdowns. That's how bad the Giants are.
Beat them by 24.
Yeah.
On the 24.
And
like they did before. That's my dad's birthday.
Yeah.
So I need that dub. Shout out to Kyle Manzardo, man, who took the Guardians to victory with a huge 2-run home run yesterday.
bye-bye, Twins.
Like,
Who's your daddy?
October is going to be fun in this city.
We
You're
got a
going to have the
chance.
Guardians in the playoffs. You're going to have the Browns. And the Cavs is going to be getting started here pretty soon. So
September 30th is media day. So
Yeah.
coming in less than 2 weeks. All right, that's going to wrap it up for Behind the Glass for Anthony Antonelli. For Earl the Pro, I'm Mikey McNuggets, and we'll see you later on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show.
peace.
Peace.